Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cranked and Ranked. I am Steven, a.k.a. Old Head, here. I guess I'm your master of ceremonies, an MC, as they say. And then with me, as always, is Mr. Eddie Sparks. Hello, sir.
What's up? How's everybody doing?
It would have been great if you had come in more with like a Flavor Flav vibe, because I'm the MC.
And boy!
That's all anyone really wants in life, is to have somebody like Flavor Flav backing you up. Like, what if it wouldn't be great if you're just walking down the street and you just make some comment like, you know what, I really like that house, and your friend behind you was like, yeah.
Can you imagine if boxing matches had hype men in the ring?
Oh, and they're just they should. I guess that would be wrestling, right?
Yeah, true.
So we're not doing Public Enemy today. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a podcast where we rank rock and or metal albums from specific artists, or, like in the case of today, specific years. Today we are going to be tackling, so we've done 1989 and 1991, right? That's all we've done year-wise so far?
Yep.
And so we're bringing it back. We're winding the clock back to way before Eddie was born, and only 4 years after I was born. I was born in 1978. So, we're going to be tackling 1982. I guess that'd be 5 years. Either way, I don't know math. We've already figured this out in another episode, that I am not the math man.
Neither am I. It's just luck in my case, really.
1982 is the year. And so it's basically, this is our top 5 favorite albums of 1982. And usually for me, so far, the 2 other years we've done ends up yielding a really long list that I have to whittle down to 5. This one was a much smaller list for me. I even went and listened to albums that I knew that I wouldn't really put in my top 5, but I just wanted to make sure. But it ended up being a rather short list. I would ask you where you were in 1982, but you were non-existent. In 1982, I was most likely listening to Michael Jackson, because I believe Thriller came out in 1982.
It did.
And so everybody in the world, no matter what age you were, I'm pretty sure was listening to Michael Jackson at about that point. But yeah, so let's just jump right into it. And also, I guess it's important to point out, since I said Michael Jackson, I don't think we're not tying ourselves to doing rock and metal albums with these years, because these are just our favorites. So who knows what might pop up? So this could get interesting. So if you don't have anything else to add right away, we can just jump right into your number 5 of 82.
I did want to say, this year specifically was very hard for me to rank, because it's one of those years that I'm not as familiar with. Like, I thought of 1991, I can pick out 5 albums like straight away that I could just list off. Maybe not like nail down, but say these are definitely albums that would make the list. But for this one, I had to really dig deep and remember which albums were from 1982 that I know, because I sent you a text actually saying it's something along the lines of the sandwich analogy, and that's when a year is kind of sandwiched between 2 big years, and like due to it's within that era, but it doesn't get, I don't know, because it doesn't have the albums.
Well, yeah, around that time, especially major label bands, seemed to be putting out an album every other year, no matter what. And it seemed like 1982 for a lot of bands was the year that they didn't put out an album. And so, yeah, you're right. It is kind of in the middle, which I guess is why it made it kind of a shorter list for me in the end.
Yeah, because I think I've got a total of 10 albums, 5 in my list, and 5 honorable mentions. But
Cool. Is your list in an order? Are you actually ordering them from least to greatest?
I suppose kinda, yeah.
Because I did, and that was part of the chore for me.
Yeah,
having to rank them in an order from my least favorite to my most favorite.
Yeah, I totally agree. The number 5 pick was especially hard because I thought, it's so close between quite a few of them. But yeah,
Let's do it. Number 5.
cool. Number 5. So this was between Screaming for Vengeance or Number of the Beast.
Well, number 5 was between those two.
Yes.
Holy shit, folks! Coming in hot.
And in the end, I weighed it up and I thought they're both solid records with, in my opinion, some songs are better than others in the case of both albums, but I had to pick Number of the Beast. Number of the Beast.
Wow, Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden, folks, is his number 5. So we probably have 4 pretty goddamn awesome albums to go. Because if you're starting, that's starting strong. That's blowing your wad right away, as they say.
And it's like I think the reason I put it at number 5 is because it's Number of the Beast, but it's not my favorite Iron Maiden album.
Yeah.
So I had to think there for a moment. When I think of 1982, that is the album I think of. Mm-hmm. But when I think comparatively, do I enjoy it as much all the way through as I do the records I've placed above it? And there are a few moments on this album that do make me go, that could have been stronger. They're few and far between, though. That's the interesting thing about doing these rankings. It makes you start to really pick apart albums that we're probably ruining these albums for ourselves, because albums that we probably would have looked at and said, nope, this thing's perfect. Now we're all like, well, actually. Yeah. And I definitely think Hallowed Be Thy Name has to be one of the strongest album closers of all time, because it's so big and epic, and it's got so many individual sections, and it's just so good. And it comes in strong as well with Invaders. Da, 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 da.
Yeah. That's one of those songs where the certain members of the band consider it a weak song, and I'm like, fuck no, man, that is a killer opening song, and I love it. I don't understand any. I guess maybe if they're comparing, I guess if you write all the songs, if it's Steve Harris, then I guess maybe you have a different outlook on everything, because you've written so many fucking songs, classic songs, that I guess Invaders maybe I guess it could be lower down on the list, but man, it's a killer opener.
And I can't really think, besides a few other tracks on the album, what I would have opened it with, because really when you look at the track listing, the songs that it's known for are actually on side B, I believe, largely, because Run to the Hills and Number of the Beast
and Hallowed
are all in the later part of the album.
That is when you have a banger. You have a banger of an album on your hands when you're like, all these other songs can just go in the second half. Fucking second half, man.
But it's one of those albums that I consider it. I kind of have this weird thing as well. I know I always bring up food, but say for example, beans on toast. It's a very British thing, but it's one of those meals where I think, okay, it's good, it'll fill me up, but then I eat it and I remember, this is fucking tasty. And that is the same reaction with my ears that I get with this record, because I initially think, it's not my favourite Maiden album, but I'll stick it on to remind myself why it's good, and I should reach for it more in that case. But, I fucking forget sometimes how good early Maiden is, because I'm a big fan of kind of the Power Slave era, so that's quite mid 80s.
I mean, that's literally 1 year after this album, or was it 84? No, 83. 83 was Power Slave, right?
That was Peace of Mind.
Oh shit! All right, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and knock off some cool points for me.
But the impressive thing I find about Iron Maiden is they're one of those bands that, you know, early on they were releasing a great album every year. You know, because you got 80, you had Iron Maiden. You know, 81 Killers, 82 this one, 83 Peace of Mind, 84 Power Slave. Are you kidding? Like, that's a consistent string of 5 albums in a row that can get better and better and better.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is one of the most impressive catalogs in metal because their 80s work is phenomenal.
Agreed.
And yeah, you know, just to wrap up on Number of the Beast, really is like the deeper cuts. For example, Children of the
Damned.
Fuck, that's the one. I always think Children of the Damned, Children of the Sea, Children of the Grave. There's so many children.
That was 2 Sabbath songs in there, right?
Yeah. But yeah, there's just so many great songs that I feel do get forgotten about sometimes in the shadow of stuff like the title track, Hallowed Be Thy Name, and Run to the Hills. And to be honest, I know it's an anthem, but Run to the Hills is one of the Maiden songs that I could probably do without hearing on the record.
I'm the complete opposite of that. That is a song that forever will be a banger to me. I don't care. It's just, there's something about creating a song like that is so like anthemic and I don't know. It's like I don't think Maiden ever did another song quite like that one, because they did other songs that had anthemic qualities, but something about that one just had it almost exists on its own force. Like it's just beyond Iron Maiden, the power of Run to the Hills. It's just so well done, so well performed. Bruce sounds amazing on that song.
Oh yeah. We're forgetting this is Bruce Dickinson's first album with the band as well, and something that struck out to me was they're not afraid of major keys. Like a lot of moments on this record are in major. You know, the invaders, da na 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 na, and you know, which generally sounds happy, but the way they play it still feels intense. And I think parts of Run to the Hills, the chorus.
Well, yeah, the chorus is the chorus is a major key.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what brings that song out. That part of the song. It's it's like an uplifting part of that song. It's very much like a cry of charging forward kind of thing. It feels like anyway.
Yeah,
but
and even the title track, I'm thinking that at least the intro. No, I think most of Number of the Beast is in major as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the mark of their songwriting though, because I think that it doesn't come across that way. Like they're able to switch from a minor to major in certain parts, or have a song mostly be in a major key. But I guess when you bring all of the musicians together and the overall tone they create, it's like it doesn't even matter. It's just it has a weight to it. They can bring a weight to a major key song that a few other bands can do. And I guess that's probably why it ended up leading eventually to like power metal and stuff like that, which power metal lives in the major key. And so, and I guess could you say power metal started with Run to the Hills? Like, is that an early, what would later become that kind of anthemic, big, grand metal kind of shit?
I would say Maiden had a major, they had a major part in that.
I know very little about power metal. My power metal kind of begins and ends with Halloween, and then I'm all like, I don't really know anything past that, or haven't heard things that really like tickled my fancy very much.
Fair. I would say, yeah, and especially in the lead guitar harmony department, that is, Maiden's guitars are pure power metal, really. Because that whole kind of galloping thing, it just conjures this images of a cavalry just charging at you.
Absolutely. It sounds like galloping horses. Like it's just a masterpiece. Like we're spending all this time talking about one song off of one album, but I mean, it's that good, folks. If you know, you know, I guess.
And that's the thing with these episodes as well, is that we're bringing to light incredibly impressive bodies of work that have managed to make a top 5 subjectively to and individually to us, but these are strong records, and that's pretty much my take on my number 5.
Awesome. So before we move on, though, as an American who I don't think I've ever had beans on toast.
Really?
I can't think of it. So it's baked. Is it baked beans? Is that what you're?
Yeah, it's just like a can of Heinz beans, and you simply heat that up, and then you just get buttered toast, like 1 or 2 slices, and then just
you butter the toast. Okay.
Yeah, you butter the toast, and then you just pour the hot beans on it, and then it obviously it's kind of a knife and fork kind of toast.
So how many pieces of toast would you say for the perfect recipe of this?
I would say a solid 2 slices of toast.
All right. So here you go, folks. If you're thinking of making something new for your family, let's do it. Especially if you're in America, because that's not a thing here. Like that the idea of that, I go, okay, I've had a lot of things on toast, but I don't think I've ever poured a can of baked beans on some toast. But now I'm gonna go try it. I'm gonna make sure for breakfast one of these days I'm gonna try that out, and I will get back to you and let you know.
Sausage goes well in it too.
I bet. Shit, sausage sounds good right now.
Yeah, you chop up a couple sausages and just chuck it in the beans on toast. It's a damn fine, very, very satisfying meal. But yeah.
Awesome. See, we can tackle other subjects on these podcasts, folks. We're not just tied to this to the rock and metal. But so just to keep things moving, I'm going to move on to my number 5. And kind of like yours, mine is one that when I ended up putting together the actual order, the fact that this one ended up here just made me go, what the fuck, man? If you had told me this album would be number 5 in a list from 1982, I would have been like, no, you need to go listen to that again, because I think something's wrong. But the 5 that I've put together, I went and listened to them all right next to each other one day while I was working. They were all playing, and this was the one that out of the 5 has the most moments where I kind of disconnect from the album a little bit. And my number 5 is the absolute classic album Signals by Rush. That comes in at number 5. And that says a lot, because this is a really strong album. I think if you're a Rush fan, this is an album that gets a lot of love. If you're not a Rush fan, it's easy to look at this album as, oh, this is when they started doing keyboard shit and they were never good after that. But that's not true. They never made a bad album, but it is true that Signals, because with Permanent Waves and especially Moving Pictures, you started to hear a lot more keys on it, but with Signals, they're very prominent.
Yeah.
And even from the beginning, like the first song that plays is Subdivisions, which is one of my favorite Rush songs. And it just starts with keyboards, and keyboards are prominent through the whole song. But the first half of the album, I think, is pretty solid, because going from Subdivisions, which is very moody and heavy on keyboards, and then busting into the Analog Kid, which is bringing back the guitar riffs, and it's like it's a real fast riff that keeps happening in it, and it's a great song. So really, like, this is just one of those things where it's an album it's really good. It's produced really well. It's got all these great songs. Chemistry's amazing. New World Man. But I find a couple of the tracks, especially on the second half of the album, it's not that they're bad songs. It's just that they kind of lose a little bit of the momentum. And
Yeah.
considering that I'm a Rush fan, that I like the urgency and technicality of the heavier things that they do. That's I know it's very common for people to say that. Oh, I would prefer 2112 over whatever it's fucking Hold Your Fire, which Hold Your Fire is a very poppy album from the 80s, and then 2112 obviously the classic where they first broke through. So but it's true. Like, I find myself, if I'm honest with who I am as a Rush fan, I go back to the mathy, energetic stuff more than I'll go to their kind of introspective, very emotional stuff, which they did both very, very well. And in this particular case, it's just one of those albums where I'm like, there's no denying that this is fucking great. But at the end of the day, it was my gut feeling was that the other four I have on my list are ones that I will go to quicker than this album. If I'm going for a Rush album, it will be a different one and not this one. So yeah, that's I don't got a whole lot to say about it. I feel like, we could talk about Rush for a long time, and I'd be happy with that. But since it's my number 5, I figured I'd just get it in and out. But,
cool.
But yeah, Signals is fucking classic. It's just less of an important album to me than the other four.
I need to dive deeper into Rush because there's some albums that I know and then loads that I've never heard. And the ones I've heard are 2112, classic. And I think I've heard Permanent Waves a few times. And
Moving Pictures, obviously.
Moving Pictures, yeah.
So, yeah. So you haven't even heard... So those are amazing albums.
Yeah.
But just a side note, go listen to Hemispheres or what's the fucking... Why do I always forget names? I'm really bad with names. Now I'm all, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you later. But Hemispheres is an amazing album.
Yeah.
But with Rush, the way that I got really into them was hearing individual tracks from the albums and not hearing, because I got introduced to Rush when I was a kid through a Greatest Hits compilation, and so I would hear a song, like in this case, like Subdivisions, and be like, oh, this is fucking great. But it's like, it's on its own, it brought me to that album. Mm-hmm. Whereas you could say that they did make albums like 2112 where it's an album experience, but I do think a lot of their albums, it's really easy to pick out the standout tracks and just find those and then see if they attract you to the album, and then you can hear the whole thing as a whole. But they've literally never done a bad album. They're one of the few bands that I can think of that have been around since the 70s that continued to put out music into this millennium and continued to put out really good music. Yeah. And so it hurts putting one of their albums not at number 1, but that's just the way it works. So,
but it made the list.
It did make the list for sure. There's no way it would have been left off.
Yeah, but, I remember your initial reaction when we were talking about doing 1982, and you were like, I don't think I know any albums from 82, and then I was like, Signals, Rush, and you were like, oh shit.
Yeah. So yeah, we can move on into your number 4, sir.
Cool. So for my number 4, I've gone for Kiss, Creatures of the Night.
Killer album.
I fucking love this album, and it's a fun timestamp of where Kiss were at the time. And it's the final album of that first makeup era. After this, they did Lick It Up and ditched the makeup, and everybody wanted it back. But that didn't happen for a long time. But this is just a really great, solid heavy metal record, and it doesn't. It's not trying to be glam. It's not it's not even trying to sound like their 70s work. They just made a ballsy heavy metal album, which is what gives this album such strength. You know, the title track, Keep Me Coming, Danger, I Love It Loud. I Love It Loud as a tune. And War Machine, fucking War Machine kicks ass.
Yeah,
And like,
there's a lot of really strong Gene Simmons vocal songs on here.
yeah, I just love his like real yeah growl on it. You know, he's really laying into it. But it's much meatier than the rest of their 80s albums, because after this they got poppier and poppier and poppier until they were actually working with Michael Bolton on like the last album, I think Hot in the Shade, and then
Michael Bolton wrote Forever. I think
that's the one. And then obviously it got to 92 and they were like, shit, well I guess we better get heavy again, because you know this poodle spandex thing isn't working out anymore. But yeah, it's funny to me because it's almost like Creatures of the Night and Revenge 10 years later kind of bookend that era, because they started on a really heavy album and ended that era with a really heavy album, and you've got all these kind of poppy hair metal albums in between. But
I think that Lick It Up is still pretty heavy of an album
it has its moments, yeah.
But
sure.
I guess because Lick It Up is the lead track off of it, and it was and they did adopt. I guess they already had like a glammy thing going, but once you take off the makeup, it's all of a sudden you're just like every other band doing the glammy thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's good. This is a fucking great album.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's a real meaty, straight ahead, not fucking around 80s heavy metal album. You know, it's got the production is there, but it's not to the point of like Crazy Nights production where it's like covered in keyboards and stuff. No. It just
it's
sounds
a pretty big production. The drums sound huge on this album, which is Mr. Huge. Eric Carr on drums on this one.
Yeah.
I think this is his second album with Kiss, or did Eric Carr play on Elder? I don't remember, but
I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, but Eric Carr is on this one. Also, it's interesting to point out that the original cover of the album has Ace Frehley on it, but Ace Frehley did not play on this album. In fact, they didn't even really have a legitimate lead guitar player. They had Vinnie Vincent on a few tracks, but then they had other people playing solos, and I guess Paul pretty much handled the majority of the guitar playing on this album. But whatever it was, whatever combo of things they did for this album, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in and say it's my number 4 also.
Oh wow, no way.
Yeah, this is also my number 4. So we can just continue talking about this album because it's killer. It's one of those albums that there's no skippable track on it.
Yeah.
And there's everyone is on at the top of their game performance-wise on this. Probably one of my favorite songs vocally from Paul Stanley is "I Still Love You." Like it sounds great, and I don't know. There's every song on here is a banger, and you can only say that about a handful of Kiss albums. Like they did a lot of albums that I love, but even on those albums, I could point out, well, why did you include like Love Gun is easily one of my favorite Kiss albums, but it ends with "Then She Kissed Me," and I'm just like, get the fuck out of here. Nobody wanted to hear a cover of that song, especially changing it from he to she, and it's very, very cute, Paul. But this one doesn't have any of that. It is a lean, mean fighting machine of an album. It's ending with War Machine. I mean, Creatures of the Night is such a good...
Creatures of the Night!
The beginning of an album. It's a great opener.
Yeah.
And, God, yeah. But, yeah, there's a lot of great Gene Simmons on here. Now, this is... I don't know if it started with this album or if it started prior to this, but they're outside songwriters co-writing with them.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that would continue through the 80s. And I've gone on record before saying that I don't care about that.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting fact, because most of the time when outside writers are brought in, they don't write an entire song and then the band just takes it, although that has happened. But most of the time it's just them coming in, helping them flesh out ideas or give them pointers and stuff like that. So I feel like for the most part, those people were brought in. Like I'm looking here, and Rock and Roll Hell was co-written by Bryan Adams.
Wow.
And that does not sound like a Bryan Adams song. No disrespect to Bryan Adams, because I will bang some of his tunes if they come on.
Oh yeah.
I'll do a Run to You or Summer of '69 or something like that. That's fine.
I heard a mashup of Run to You and Enter Sandman, and it works shockingly well. Like, it shouldn't be that
awesome.
good. Yeah.
But yeah, so Creatures of the Night. What else? Do you have anything else to say about this? Because I sort of took over once I announced it was also my number 4. But
I was just so struck by it when I first heard it, because it was very much it was one of those albums where when I put it on, I was like, I had to do a double take, and I was like, this is fucking Kiss. Like, it not that, Kiss aren't great in their 70s work and stuff, but it's such a step up heaviness wise, because obviously they had the riffs and stuff, and they had their real moments like God of Thunder, but it's like they took the song God of Thunder from Destroyer and made a whole album around that with an even bigger production.
Yeah, I almost feel like this was it's easy to tear this album down because it's the one that came the year after Music from the Elder, and that was universally loathed. And honestly, even though I enjoy it, I can't deny that it's a pretty shitty album. But it's almost it feels like it's kind of like telling all their fans, we're sorry. we're really gonna
record.
Yeah, we're really gonna put together all of our best shit and bring our A game and make an album for the people that want that big Kiss thing again. And they outdid themselves. I feel like I don't think that there is a more, even Revenge, I don't think is as tight of an album as this is track wise.
Yeah,
like it's just nothing but great shit, and that's why it makes it into our top 5.
Cool. So on that note, you got anything else to say about Creatures of the Night?
Not really. It's if some of you are listening and you're not Kiss fans, just go listen to this album, because I think you might find things about it that you enjoy. But but it's Kiss is one of those bands that I'm not going to argue with people if somebody just says Kiss is a shitty manufactured band that wrote nothing but pop music, and I'm like, well, first off, you're an idiot. Yeah. Second off, I'm not going to talk to you about this anymore. Because it's like, once people make their minds up about something like this, you could present them with the facts and they don't care. So, so you're either a Kiss fan or you can fuck off.
Cool. So my number 3 is a bit of a deep cut, actually. I've gone for Y&T's Black Tiger.
Okay, this is one that I really don't know at all. I may know songs from it, but as an album, I don't think I know it.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a deep cut. Has one of the coolest guitar intros to an album ever. But it's like just this good time rock and roll American 80s metal. And up until looking for albums for this list, I'd never sat down and listened to this album. And I'm actually ashamed that I hadn't given this a listen long before, because it's exactly what I come to 80s metal for. It's exactly what you would hear like in a like party scene in an 80s movie, because it just has such a classic 80s party vibe. And the songs like Open Fire, Don't Want to Lose, Hell or High Water. The list goes on. There's so many great songs on here, and I just wanted to give this one some real recognition because I haven't had like too much time to get acquainted with it, but I've been really impressed each time I've listened to it. And,
I don't think I really know Y&T at all. Now I feel like I need to go dig into them because I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, it's produced by Max Norman. He produced a lot of albums that I like in the 80s. And
they're definitely a good
from what
time
you're saying,
feel.
it sounds like a fun album. So I'll definitely have to check it out.
For sure. And even down to the artwork, that Black Tiger robot looking thing is classic to this era. And I know people can turn around and say, oh, the reason we don't do stuff like that anymore is because it's dated. And I think, well, yeah, it's dated to a time because everything's dated to a time. You got to come up with something real abstract to be fucking totally timeless.
Yeah, well, it's like we talked about this before, and I made the analogy of somebody saying, nobody says Citizen Kane is a shitty movie because it's dated to that time period. It's just like, I feel like, especially like rock and roll doesn't get the respect it deserves, and so instead of giving it that viewpoint that people give quote unquote films, they just look at it as like, oh, this is a stupid thing that happened in this year and it sounds dated. I'm like, well, no, I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm glad we're here doing things like this because, that attitude is fucking stupid. And this just looks like an album that I would enjoy. But just going and looking at like their other albums, I'm just looking at the names of their albums and I'm like, I don't know any of these. How did I fall off of the Y&T train so early and never even? Oh, they're called Yesterday and Today. That's what Y&T stands for.
Yeah. That was. I think they ditched the Yesterday and Today like whole thing and just started calling themselves Y&T after their first like few albums. I'm not 100% sure because I think they did some 70s albums. Yep. And then in the 80s they jumped to just being called Y&T. And
it looks like Earthshaker was the first one where they were called Y&T.
Yeah.
But wow, okay, this is a band I need to dive into because they seem like something I might enjoy.
Yeah, it's just good, real cranked up, good time 80s American rock and rollin' metal. It is a too right, man, too right. Like when I heard this, I was thinking, shit, where has this been? And I love when an album makes me feel like that because that's it. It's a magical feeling because you're like, this gemstone has been just sitting here for me to find, and now I've found it. And I think I have a theory on why I don't know this band because for some reason my brain has a weird way of easily dismissing groups with initials as their name. Really?
So like Y&T, there's another one that's real, a UFO. I don't really know UFO because you just see these things and I go, okay, well, I don't know. I mean, and then there's like, what was that one? I mean, MSG, the Macaulay Schenker group or whatever. Like they're all bands that I see the letters and I go, all right, I'll listen to this some other time. I don't know why it doesn't appeal to me. It just I can't think of like AC/DC. It's the only like not abbreviation, but initial band that I think that I'm into. I can't think of another one.
Yeah, that's I do see that.
DRI is great, but that's thrash. Yep. That's a totally different world. You can have any name and be some kind of thrash band, and I've probably heard of you.
Oh, and quick thing we should probably mention: the guy from Power Trip, rest in peace.
Yes, Riley Gale. Some of you listening to this may know the band Power Trip. Some of you may not.
There's a poster of it behind you. That's what got me thinking.
It's a flag. It's a huge Power Trip flag in my room. They were a band. We'll do a quick side note here. They were a band that was really close to my heart because they were also very close to my home because they were from Dallas, Texas. And to me, there aren't a lot of modern, and I know their sound wasn't modern, but I mean like recent metal bands. There aren't a lot of recent metal bands that find their way into my canon of listening like so solidly. Like they became a band that I just totally loved everything they did. And the fact that, especially around now, they're the best thing happening in Texas when it comes to metal. I can't think of another band from Texas that's putting out anything worth a damn or even on the same level as what Power Trip did. Power Trip was a thrash metal band, by the way, if you don't know. Yeah. But the singer Riley Gale unexpectedly passed away Thursday, I think Thursday morning.
Yeah.
Or was it Tuesday? Fuck, I don't remember.
Have they disbanded? Have
no,
they?
They announced that they disbanded.
Oh wow.
Did they?
Oh, I don't know. You said they were a band. I was just worried.
Oh, I don't think that. I can't see them continuing without Riley.
Yeah.
Like he was the mouthpiece of that band. Like he was the guy that, like you. Unfortunately, like I know some people don't like it, but sometimes you connect a band with their subject matter, and in this case, their politics, and that was really driven by Riley.
Yeah.
And but yeah, he died unexpectedly. And the weird thing about it is that like I follow him on Twitter.
Yeah.
And he literally tweeted like 10 hours before he died or something like that, saying something about like Marvel Alliance, like the video game or something.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those tweets where he's tweeting about something. I'm like, oh, I don't play video games, so I don't know what this is, Riley. I'll talk to you later. And then he's gone. And so there hasn't been any official word as to how he died, but it's pretty shocking. He was 34, I think.
Yeah.
So pretty fucking young. So,
yeah, no age to go out.
Agreed.
Like I will say, it's strange actually how I found out about it. Actually, there's a show. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's Joe Pera Talks with You. It is the most relaxing TV show ever put out. It has its jokey moments, but you know, at its heart, it's just this really nice, chill guy, and he. It's hard to explain. Go check it out. But Joe Pera Talks with You. Well, anyway, I followed Joe Pera on Twitter, and I just caught it by chance, and he said Riley Gale of Power Trip was one of the nicest men I've ever met, and I was like, this wholesome guy. This really, you know, who you wouldn't think would be into this kind of music, all of a sudden he drops this news. But yeah, it sucks, you know, Riley Gale passing away. I was just as equally surprised to find out he liked thrash, to put a maybe positive on such a terrible thing.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Over here in the States, a guy that's an anchor on Fox News did a piece on Riley because Riley had done like a phone interview with this guy from Fox, and apparently they became kind of buddies online, even though if you know anything about Fox News is very right wing, and Riley is absolutely the opposite, or was the opposite, unfortunately. But the fact that like he was that kind of person where he reached across to the other side there and made a friend, so much so that in the middle of Fox News, they're giving a special send off to a guy in a thrash metal band who was very left leaning, and so that says a lot about him as a person. Yeah. But a lot of people, because of his politics, you know, didn't like him because he was very outspoken. He didn't take any bullshit, and he called it like he saw it. And there should be more like Riley, but maybe there will be. Maybe in his passing, other people will discover him, and maybe he'll be I don't know, a hero or at least a template for the kind of person you could be, you know, while still standing up for something, you know.
For sure.
So yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say it really sucks too because I was literally just getting into Power Trip as well. I've discovered their music very recently, and the news of his passing is just it just sucks. But yeah. we'll pull the positive vibes back in now.
So for those, so obviously we're you can tell the time period we're doing this podcast. If for some reason, if this is a thing where years and years down the line people are still listening to this, this was in 2020, the year when all sorts of really horrible shit happened.
Yep.
We'll see if things turn around.
2020 could easily
in November. Hint.
This year could easily be the track list for a metal album. Like, just all of the horrible travesties that have happened during this year.
Yeah.
Like, there's a song for every month,
Jeez.
With July being the interlude, because not much happened during that.
Yeah. So we could, let's hop back in. That was a little moment there for Riley Gale, but let's not forget why we're here.
No problem.
And for our top 5 of 1982, which I guess we're on your number 3 now, right? Oh wait, so you did your number 3. I'm all like, is it time for your number 3? That was your number 3. So
cool.
This is an interesting segue though, because while that isn't my number 3, my number 3 also comes from an American rock and roll band that started in the 70s. My number 3 album is Rock in a Hard Place by Aerosmith.
Hey.
Which if those of you who know Aerosmith, you're probably going, what? When I'm saying that, because the consensus, or as I like to say, the groupthink mentality out there is that this is a bad album, which is fucking ridiculous. Just like Rush, Aerosmith has never put out a bad album. This is, I guess, the reason why Rock in a Hard Place is considered a lesser album is because not only do you not have any Joe Perry, because Joe Perry quit the band and he was not the guitar player on this album. That was Jimmy Crespo. But even Brad Whitford, the other guitar player from Aerosmith, he only plays on one track. He quit the fucking band too. So at this point, you had Steven Tyler, Tom Hamilton, and Joey Kramer, the OGs from Aerosmith, holding it down. And just that alone, the fact that they put out this rockin' of an album, first of all, it's really well produced. Who produced this one? Jack Douglas did this one. It sounds so good, and I realized that Jimmy Crespo is not as good of a guitar player as Joe Perry. That's obvious. About 1 billion people are not as good of a guitar player as Joe Perry, but he does a really great job. He sounds good. There's a lot of great riffs on here. Steven Tyler has never phoned in a performance in his life. He is one of my favorite vocalists, and he sounds great here. There's a lot of the same bluesy rock elements that everyone already expected from Aerosmith. But in 1982, that's kind of cool that they just went, look, we're Aerosmith. We could make a different album, but then we'd be a different band. And I absolutely feel that that's what they did. They just basically stuck to their guns and made the best thing that they could make, considering the circumstances. Because at this point, not only was the band falling apart or had fallen apart, but everyone's still dealing with drug issues.
Yeah,
and also the realities of being a young person who becomes a star. So it's like all of these things where, these guys. I mean, I would have hate to have been their manager, having to put up with their bullshit. But this is an album that every time I put it on, I guess it is like you would say a beans on toast kind of thing, where in their discography I look at it and go, that's Rock in a Hard Place. It's pretty good. But you put it on and I'm like, this fucking rules. If it was singled out on its own, like if we ever get to an Aerosmith ranking, this won't be high up on the list probably. Yeah. But on its own merit, It's really good. It's really energetic, and I never get bored. Every single song has some sort of thing that sticks out as a really cool part. And I also have to, full disclosure, Aerosmith is one of my favorite bands, and in my opinion, the greatest American rock and roll band. And anything they put out, I'm going to enjoy. So I'm a little bit biased when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy this album a lot, and that's why it's my number 3.
Cool. I think it's cool. It's the coolest thing about this is that, we're not setting anything in stone. That the whole point of this show is subjectivity, and just being able to observe different opinions and stuff. So if anyone has any rebuttals to any of our picks, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I actively read the comments of Cranked and Ranked episodes. So
the thing that I was explaining to my older brother a little bit about what the podcast is, and the way that I put it to him, I think makes perfect sense. Where I was basically saying that it's a podcast where we rank a band's discography from what we think is the least, their worst to their best. But the important part of the podcast is the conversation about the albums. The ranking is almost secondary.
Yeah.
Like we're ranking them, but the point of ranking them is to really talk about what makes each album what it is and makes the band what they are. So like that's more important. The ranking is like the thing that we need. It's the catalyst to move us into discussing these albums.
It's the initial spark that lights the fire of the conversation.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're on to number 2, sir. All
cool.
You.
Okay, so my top 3, especially, I suppose you could say, you know what? I'm not going to give anything away. I'm just going to say my top 3 are unconventional for a metal fan to be picking.
So I just figured something out. I don't know. I didn't. So Screaming for Vengeance was left off your list.
I did have to leave it off because for me it was between that number 5 spot was between Iron Maiden or Screaming for Vengeance.
I for sure thought Screaming would come in at 4, and then it didn't, and I'm like, oh shit, okay. So now I'm even more fascinated to find out what your number 2 and 1 are.
Yeah, because like when I started really thinking about it, I was thinking metal albums from 82, but then I looked up, what if I type in rock albums from 82? And that opened a whole can of worms at that point because there were so many more to choose from. But I have relegated Screaming for Vengeance to the honorable mentions though.
Of course.
So so I have got for number 2 Asia's self-titled 1982 debut.
Okay, so all right, refresh my memory. What's the hit off of that album?
Heat of the Moment.
Oh, okay. That's a fucking good song.
Yeah. I got thinking that too when I saw the album cover. I was like, oh shit. Like that's the thing. It's prog meets 80s pop rock. It's kind of like the middle ground between Yes and Journey, and it hits a nice balance in between.
Interesting. These days, I believe, especially the song "Heat of the Moment" would be referred to as dad rock.
Yeah, I'm a big dad rock fan. I love anything considered dad rock.
There's some great dad rock out there. And I don't even take that as a derogatory term because I am a dad, and so people are like dad rock. I'm like, fuck yeah, it's dad rock. What? You try raising a kid and rocking at the same time.
I was actually referred to in high school as Dad Rock Will.
Nice.
My actual name outside of Eddie Sparks is Will, by the way, if anybody's confused. But I was called Dad Rock Will because all of the bands I liked came at least 30 to 40, maybe 20 years before everybody else's favorite bands in high school. But yeah.
And by the way, my real name is Cornelius.
This is really new to me.
It's not. I was just thinking like, oh, maybe they think my name's not Steven. No, it is. That's my name.
We got curveballs coming down the pipeline, people. But yeah, I really got thinking, and songs like Heat of the Moment, obviously, and then you get a track like Only Time Will Tell, Soul Survivor, Wildest Dreams. There's some really good stuff on here, and if you're a prog fan, it's got stuff there to satisfy you, but if you're also just into straight up 80s pop rock, this is also a very accessible album. And
now if I remember right, is Asia kind of a supergroup?
I think so. I think, yeah, because they've got, I think some of the members were in Yes. I can't remember.
That would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, they even had the same dude do the artwork, Roger Dean, which is badass. Always loved his album art. And it's just such it's a really strong album.
Yeah, yes, and King Crimson and Emerson, Lake and Palmer apparently all involved somehow in this band. So yeah, it is a super group.
And it's funny because it is proggy, but it's also quite straightforward. I mean, it's got its little proggy like kind of stuff in there every now and again.
Yeah.
But with regards to song structures and stuff, it's a very easy album to get into. And
they have a lot of albums.
Asia.
I did not even know.
Yeah,
Asia seems to me like a band like Boston that put out like 3 or 4 records and then fucked off or whatever.
Yeah.
But wow, they've got like 10 to 12 albums maybe.
There's some really, really good stuff in their discography, actually. I did a bit of a deep dive. Yeah. I think I listened to, I think it's called Gravitas, which is one of the
most recent, seems.
Yeah, it's the most recent. And the guitar tone on it reminded me of late 80s Europe, and I was completely sold on it. You know?
Yeah.
I love that kind of real buttery, smooth legato tone for that kind of shred lead. But it's just so... going back to this 82 self-titled Asia album, it's a really good album. And I can stick it on and just be in a good mood. And that's... something I've gotten from these albums is a variety of moods that they put me in, or I have to be in to fully enjoy them. But you know, Number of the Beast gets me hyped up. Creatures of the Night is like, fuck yeah, let's go drink. Y&T's Black Tiger, I'm like, hell yeah, I just again would just want to have a good time. And then Asia is like, I want to rock, but I want to chill and rock at the same time. And I think that's where the whole dad rock thing comes into it, because it's an album that you put on, you're not moshing to it, but it's like
I want to rock, but right now I'm working on my taxes. Yeah. So can you keep it a little bit soft back there?
But yeah, it's got some killer shit on it, dude. And that is my number 2 pick, Asia by Asia.
Awesome. And Asia, which I didn't know they were a UK band, but they are, apparently.
Yeah.
I guess members are British, but that being said, that's how I'm connecting my number 2 and your number 2, because my number 2 is from the UK, and this is the only album on my list where I think anyone will be surprised. This is the only one, and this is an album that I would give credit to being the album that led me toward heavier music. Because I first heard it when I was in the 3rd grade, which I believe that would make me around 8 or 9 years old. I believe it was my birthday turning 9. I got this album from a friend of mine who bought it for me. And it pretty much changed my life because I realized that there was more aggressive music out there. My number 2 of 1982 is the album Troops of Tomorrow by The Exploited.
Wow.
Which is UK punk band, classic. It it is an album that sounds just as good today as it did in 82 or when I first heard it in around 87 or whatever. And it's just fucking good. It never lets up. It's probably like if you wanted to like give somebody a great example of what was going on with the UK punk scene when the punks started to get a little bit better at playing their instruments and making songs, but they were still retaining that UK edge. Like it wasn't totally going thrash. Like some bands did that. This isn't a thrash album by any stretch of the imagination. This is a punk album with punk riffs that nowadays you hear these riffs and you go, man, somebody's done that riff like 50 times. It's like there's a lot of those on here, but Troops of Tomorrow is nothing but killer songs. And now it's an album that a lot of you've heard a lot of covers from this album.
Yeah.
Because first of all, on the Judgment Night soundtrack from the 90s, Slayer and Ice-T cover, they do a medley where they do Disorder, UK 82, and War, which are 3 songs off of this. And then just this very year, Mr. Bungle released a cover of the song USA from this album. So clearly it's not just me. It's an album that resonated with a lot of people. And it's just one of those things where it aged so well in my heart and in my eardrums. It never does anything but excite me every time I put it on. And I'm not into a lot of that era of punk. Like I like random things. Like that's not my cup of tea. As you probably are all learning with this episode, my expertise is pretty focused to a particular time period of rock and metal, probably starting around 86 and winding down in the mid 90s. But this is one of those things that I first heard it and I was like, what the fuck is this? And I didn't know you could do music like this. Yeah. And it ended up leading me to getting into later on down the line, easing my way in with like, I guess probably the year after this, I got Appetite for Destruction. And then a couple years later, I got into Anthrax, and it just sort of led me down the path of aggressive music. And I absolutely adore this album. And it's really the only Exploited album that I like. So that says something, I guess, for it, because their other ones are fine, but some better than others. But this is the only one that sticks out as like, this is when they nailed it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know a few bands that like, I like their other albums, but if I'm in the mood for that band, I'll stick to one mainstay album. Yeah. And that's just personal preference at the end of the day. You people like things more than others. It's just how it works. But I'll definitely have to check that album out, because I've not really done too much of a deep dive into punk. My knowledge doesn't extend far beyond the Misfits, the Ramones, and the Sex Pistols. Those are kind of the 3 that I know. I know there's better stuff, but for me, those are the 3 that I know relatively well.
To be fair, this is on the subject, but off the subject. I don't think there's a better punk album than Nevermind the Bollocks. I think it's almost like the punk scene was created and perfected, and then it was like it was never done that well again. Yeah. And there's other really great albums, but if we ever do 1977, you will hear me gush over Nevermind the Bollocks, or Bollocks. I don't. It's a word that is a word that I wish I sounded cooler saying, because if you don't have a British accent, you sound like an idiot saying that word.
We say bollocks. Well, bollocks. I say bollocks. Yeah. There's a
bollocks
real awe to it.
Yeah. Bollocks is one of those words. Like, I don't know if it was Eddie Izzard or somebody that talked about different kinds of bollocks could mean good or bad. Because if you say it's the dog's bollocks, that means it's great. But if you just say bollocks to that, it's like fuck off. It's just like that's such a confusing word. But I guess it's something great about a word that can be used to mean good things or bad things.
Yeah,
it's body parts.
It's a very British thing, and something I saw the other day on the subject of how British people pronounce things. So it says it was captioned, and it was just a picture of a water bottle, and someone had said British people be like water bottle, like they'd replaced they took the T's out and replaced them with apostrophes. And it was just it totally made sense.
That's like that is got to be that same Eddie Izzard thing where he talks about Americans and British people. And he's like, and you spell, what was it? You say herbs and we say herbs because there's a fucking H in it.
I stacked a fair few herbs today at work. Fun fact, I have a raging backache today. Just a side note, I have a raging backache today because I was at work today and my coworker didn't show up to work.
Oh shit.
Yeah, no sick note, no anything. I can only imagine they slept in till pretty late and then realized they had to kind of stealth mode it for the rest of the day.
Yeah. So once again, for those of you listening, we're in 2020, and Eddie is one of those frontline people. Like he works. he's not a doctor. He works at a grocery store, which is way worse.
Oh, it. You know, the word hero gets thrown around a lot these days.
I think in these times I would consider you a hero, because that's like the only place that I go is the grocery store. And if those people don't have their shit together, I'm like, come on, man, this is the only place I'm going.
Yeah, it's been a shit show today because throughout the summer, I'm sorry, I know this is a music podcast, but I just thought I'd get my little COVID rant in here.
That's all right. We haven't done that enough. We should do it.
Yeah. Nobody has done a thing they're told until it's made mandatory, public wise. I mean, some people are better than others, you know, to their credit, but it's just really a case now where everybody's got a mask on. That obviously helps the spread, helps prevent it. But recently, over the course of the summer, we've made sure that we had extra staff in. There were plenty of people on the department, but now as the summer is drawing to a close, I've got less and less people on my department, and I've reached that awful part of the year where I'm literally on my own all day trying to keep up with the people coming through the store. And I go on my lunch break knowing I'm going to come down to devastation. But that is the life of a produce worker with a Sunday shift these days.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel for you, but also I'm proud of you, sir.
Thank you
for sticking to it.
This looking forward to this podcast is what got me through this day. Yeah.
That is something I look forward to having these discussions, because I'm already an antisocial person. And so, you know, getting to have these discussions, I'm like, oh, this is what it's all about, having these nerdy music discussions that sometimes will veer off into other discussions. But
I think these year episodes, they can be a bit more flexible because we're not having to power through it like a whole band discography.
Yeah.
I'm not doing my track by tracks, and we just take up a lot less time. So I've got no problem with a tangent here or there. But
neither do I.
Yeah.
But that being said, we've reached number 1, right?
I believe so. You did your number 2, didn't you?
Exploited was my number 2.
There we go. So the crown jewel in my unexpected metalhead picks of 1982.
I'm so curious.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. Toto 4.
Oh my God.
Hell yeah.
Oh, okay.
I actually have on hand the box set I got about 6 years ago. I heard the song "Hold the Line," and I immediately thought, that's a fucking great song. But then I realized I like a lot of Toto songs, and I have in my hand the box set here of their first 7 albums on CD with a live DVD as well. But
nice. So before we even jump in, for those of you who don't immediately know what's going on here, he chose the album that includes the single "Africa"
and Rosanna.
And Rosanna, but currently in this current climate, I think everybody knows Africa. It's had a resurgence. Weezer covered it, and I think it's become a song that more people know now.
I think because it ascended to meme status, that it's once a song becomes a meme, it's beloved by all. Like All Star Smash Mouth, like that got a complete second wind. Like when it came out, it was popular. When it was in Shrek, it became even more popular. When all the people that grew up watching Shrek started making memes of it being in Shrek, it had like a third resurgence. It's just like Bohemian Rhapsody with Wayne's World.
My favorite, which is one that I thought was great back then, and I'm glad it got a resurgence, was "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley.
Oh, for sure.
That's a song that I will bang any day of the fucking week. I don't know what it is about it. I just love it. And so once it started coming up, I'm like, yeah, Rickroll me every day. It's fine with me. But yes, Africa's on here. So let's, and so wait. So this has Rosanna.
I believe it's much like Thriller, where like 7 of the album's 10 tracks are singles.
Yeah, it was a pretty big album. I'll let you tear into this one, sir.
Cool. So I'll just get the track list up so I can remind myself how many. Yeah. 5. So half the album is singles. Obviously you got Rosanna, Africa, Won't Hold You Back, Waiting for Your Love, Make Believe. They're not metal songs, but they're great songs all round. And it really is just a lesson in how just an excellent group of musicians, because they were all session musicians that formed a supergroup of session players and just
wow.
Yeah, they were all just session players that got together through a mutual friendship, and that's why they're so fucking good at making great, memorable music.
That's interesting. I'm looking at the wiki here. This is a fact about them that blows my mind. It says the band delayed touring after the release of the album to instead help in the production of Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah.
So Toto put out this killer like pop album that topped the charts, but also had a hand in another album that completely demolished everything in its path. That is insane.
Steve Lukather has been the band's guitarist. He's been on an insane amount of like extremely well-known songs. And
wow.
Like I think the fact that they're all session players. I mean, Jeff Porcaro is one of my favorite drummers of all time because he just had such control and subtlety in his grooves. Especially his shuffle beats like you get on Rosanna, for example. That essentially taught me how to play ghost notes on drums, and I'm still kind of figuring those out now. Being a metal drummer, I suppose in the more modern metal realm, ghost notes are more prominent, but in kind of my style, it's very straight ahead. Single stroke, double stroke, and paradiddles are pretty much all I need, but
I don't know. I don't understand anything you just said.
Good old drummer terminology. We make bing bong ting tong sounds.
we would just have words of the sounds, like when I was in bands and we would be trying to tell a drummer what to do. We'd be like, all right, so the kind of fill we want here is we want you to do a plaka plunka right there. And then on this one, can you do a dakadatish?
One of my favorites recently was, can you do a I think that was the little fill in Throes of Rejection by Pantera. Me and my friend Callum were talking about putting into a song, and it's that part where it's like
okay.
like and that was the but I being a drummer, it's so funny talking to like the rest of a band because I'm like, do you want a flam here? And they're like, is that the one that goes plack-titty plack? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll just start doing noises from here on in. You know,
but it was even harder for me because I'm a guitar player. And
Yeah.
I don't even know guitar terminology. So I would just be like, look, you put your fingers here and you go jugga jugga and then you do it here too. Because I wrote songs and then I didn't know how to explain them. I didn't know how to read music. I still don't. And so it was always just me going, look, I think it begins on A. I don't know. Quit asking me letters.
But yeah, it just like the songwriting on this album is phenomenally good. And I want to actually just say, Toto, while they're not a straight up like all the time rocking kind of band, they've got some killer tunes that, you know, could do with like a glam metal makeover, because they do have that 80s hard rock edge sometimes. And I think it's Afraid of Love and Lovers in the Night, track 6 and 7. Put those on and you'll get your head bopping there. You know,
I really need to dive into this whole album because I don't even remember the other singles. I just know Rosanna and Africa off of this album. I'm sure I would remember them if I heard them, but those are the only two that come to mind right away.
I would say this is essentially like the pop Rain in Blood, where it's like both iconic anthems from the album bookend the record, and then everything in between is great, but it's bookended by two iconic masterpieces.
Which is interesting because I remember I heard an interview on a local radio station I listened to where they'd interviewed somebody from the band, but I don't remember who it was, but he was basically saying that Africa was an afterthought and they didn't even want to put it on the album, let alone release it as a single.
Which is crazy because, like, if you listen to Africa, like, yeah, it's one of those songs that maybe gets overplayed, but it's such a classic song. And even it is one of their softer tracks, but goddamn, if I don't get vibes the moment I hear those, like, synth pads at the start, like, I'm immediately in a good place. And for me, this album, it hits its kind of rock peak at tracks 6 and 7. They both represent like the harder edge of the band, but goddamn, they're all excellent players and excellent songs. And I think the most impressive thing as well is, like, they've not got just one or just two, but like several singers in the band too. I mean, you've got David Page, Bobby Kimball, also Joseph. They've had a lot of vocalists, lead vocalists. Steve Lukather sings. There's just so many great moments on this record, and really Toto's whole discography is something worth exploring. And I can quite safely say that this is not the only Toto album that will appear on a Crankdom Ranked, and I've been waiting for a while to drop Toto in. But, you know, they're a tricky one for me because I know there's moments where they do jump into the chug 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 realm, but it's also interspersed with like a disco-y kind of pop song, which, you know, is so... I think it's just the sheer fact that they're all excellent musicians, that they can write stuff that, you know, is complex, but with enough of a pop sensibility to it that it is 100% easily accessible. And I would say Toto and Asia, my two top picks, have quite a lot in common. The only difference being Asia falls more on the prog side ever so slightly than Toto does, but there's some real tricky moments in Toto songs that people don't realize are as hard as they are. And, you know, even down to the, like, hitting all the ghost notes and getting the feel just right on a drum kit. For those who don't know what a ghost note is, it's essentially a note that's played, but it's more felt than heard. So when you hear, like, those kind of snare drum hits that go like like all those like little inflections in between really elevate the feel to where it's got more of a rhythm to it, and it's much more danceable, really. But
it's like a swing. It adds a swing to it a little bit.
Yeah,
to a beat. It's just a softer played note, but it's that's one of those things as a drummer. Those are the things that impress me more about drummers, because you have to put those things at the exact right moment for it to give that right groove to the beat. Otherwise, it can totally throw everything off. And so, those are the things that I don't take those things for granted. Like there are drummers that do really subtle things that I don't think people really notice. A modern drummer that does that well is Bron Daler from Mastodon. He throws in a lot of little things that if you're just listening to the song as a whole, you don't really get it. But if you pull out and you just look what he's playing, there's a whole lot of little intricate things that are thrown in there that make the rhythm of the song what it is. You don't even realize it, but you're like, if that wasn't there, it wouldn't have the same feel that it does. So it's pretty great.
Totally agreed. And you know, I did initially say maybe this Toto album's going to lose me some metal street cred, but you know, at the end of the day, we
just did Def Leppard. Sure, Def Leppard did some rockin' albums, but they did albums that are closer to Toto and Asia than other things we've talked about.
You're right. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, like when I was a kid, Rosanna was a rock song. Yeah. Like it's like you could say it, it's poppy, but it all fell under this umbrella of different kinds of rock. Some rock was real soft and easily accessible, and other stuff was aggressive and you know, not mainstream at all. But it's all, at the end of the day, you know, you could all boil it down to rock and roll in some way or another.
Also, I just want to say one last thing. If you've never heard any version of Rosanna that's like radio edited, listen to the album version, because it's got a completely out of left field bluesy jazz guitar solo at the end of it that is fucking delicious. It is absolutely one of the best guitar moments on the album, because I'm just thinking, fuck yeah, Steve, you go for it, dude. And even what the piano completely changes to, it's just so, it's very theatrical, and I like that a lot. But that
also apparently a song about Rosanna Arquette, from what I've heard.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if that was just a rumor, but I feel like one of the band members had said that they were involved with Rosanna Arquette, and the song sprang from that. So
cool. Yeah, that
fun fact.
That's my number one pick for 1982, Toto
Awesome.
4.
And I'm going to bring us full fucking circle all the way back around to the beginning of the episode, and I'm going to talk about my number one album, which is The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden.
Yeah!
All right, yes.
Sorry,
yes.
I had to do the scream.
666. Well, that sounded pretty good.
Yeah, that's fucking
the number of the beast. It is a human number. I sound kind of like Dr. Evil.
Its number is $1 billion.
So yeah, we talked about this at the beginning of the episode. I can't add a lot more because I think I'm pretty sure I interjected a lot when Eddie was talking about it. But Number of the Beast is just a full-on classic album with nothing but incredible songs. And like we mentioned earlier, you know that you have a badass album on your hands when all of the most well-known classic songs are on the B side of your album. Like that's something to be said, because they had to have known that those songs were strong, and they were just like, yeah, first half's good on its own. Let's throw those at the end. And
Bold move.
literally every song. I just it's one of those things we talked about. You look at a song title and you immediately start singing in your head, "Children of the Damned." Like it's it comes out immediately. There's not a lot more I can say about this. I feel like this is an album that's been talked to death because it's one of those things where it's classic because it's so fucking good, and it was. I mean, I know that I guess they broke through in the U.S. a lot more with Power Slave, but this is really like the fact that they did two what I consider completely badass albums in a row with Paul Di'Anno, and then got a different singer and did an album that is arguably much better than what they had already done. And also just you hear what they're a band that when people nerd out over Iron Maiden, I absolutely understand it. It's warranted because the things, the power of the songs, the guitar riffs, what they were doing on the guitars, but then on top of that, the fucking vocals on this album. It's one of those things where people can talk a lot. I don't know. I feel like I'm just going to start saying things that people have already said before. Bruce Dickinson's an amazing vocalist, but it's you listen to what he did, and I don't know how old he was when he did this album. He was in his 20s for sure, maybe even early 20s. I don't know, but the power of his voice and just he brought such a level of urgency while at the same time having this really. Is operatic? It might be the wrong term. It wasn't like operatic.
I'd say it's within that ballpark. It's very theatrical.
Just the fact that because like we said before, like I'm not a power metal fan, and for the most part, I don't like singers that are all most of the time. But Bruce Dickinson figured out he fits right in that sweet spot where he is an amazing singer and can carry a tune, but also has an aggressiveness and power to his voice that is undeniable. Like, we could talk about Judas Priest. Everyone loves, Rob Halford, but I consider Bruce Dickinson a much better vocalist because of the I don't know what it is. There's a rawness to his vocals, whereas Rob Halford to me seems way more like he's a veteran. Like he has full command of his instrument, so there's no rough edges. I think with Bruce Dickinson, there's a human quality to the otherworldliness of his vocals that just makes it seem that much more metal, and he fits right in with the music they were making. And I love it. I love Number of the Beast. It's a banger of an album and the best of 1982. And in my opinion, this was the only one where I knew it was going to be number one when I started this. I'm like, well, there's no way any other album's going to be number one. And then I just built from there. So that's my number one, bringing us full circle.
Cool. We've pretty much. What I was going to say is I kind of make the comparison between. I mean, it's virtually exactly the same story. Paul Di'Anno being replaced with Bruce Dickinson is exactly like what happened with Chuck Mosley and Mike Patton in Faith No More. They did the first two albums with the original singer, and he did a great job at what he did. But when they got, obviously Paul Di'Anno, but when they got Bruce Dickinson in, the range of what they could do vocally went from here to fucking outer space comparatively.
Yeah, they were. Paul Di'Anno would have been very out of place on this album, and especially on the albums that would follow. Which I think is why down the road with Blaze Bayley. That's why Blaze Bayley has struggled so much with Maiden, because Blaze Bayley was closer to a Paul Di'Anno, a much better vocalist than Paul Di'Anno, but he would have been more at home on that early punky kind of side of Iron Maiden. You start really expanding your sound and making these big, grand compositions and stuff. You need a vocalist that can carry that, and they fucking found him for sure.
Oh,
and,
definitely.
He's a vocalist that still sounds amazing today, and he's like 60 years old or something like that. I mean, they're an amazing band. So
I will say, to this day, one of the most badass things I have ever seen is Iron Maiden coming on stage. I think it's at Download Festival. I think, and they come on stage and they get a fly pass from 2 Spitfire fighter planes from World War II, and they fly over the stage. Have you never seen this?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's fucking cool. They get 2 fighter planes from World War II, Spitfires, and they do kind of like a aerobatics thing, and then fly over the stage, and then the band immediately comes on with Aces High.
Holy shit. That's one of those things where, like, don't bother going to any more concerts after that.
Yeah, like hang on, I'll have to look it up.
Okay,
what is it? Iron Maiden Spitfire flyover. Download 2013. Iron Maiden Spitfire flyover. I'll look it up. It's so cool. I'll have to save the link. Yeah.
Cool.
There we go.
Everybody else, go look it up. Well, wait till we're done, because we're not done yet. We now have to go through some honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut.
Yes, we do.
To be completely honest, I only really have 2 that I struggled with. Like other albums came out in '82 that I think are pretty good, but there was only 2 that I initially thought maybe would be in the top 5, but didn't make it. Why don't you start this off?
Okay, so in my honorable mentions, I've got Anvil, Metal on Metal. Mm-hmm. Scorpions, Blackout.
Oh yeah, that had a lot of hits on it.
Van Halen, Diver Down.
So that was one that I went back and listened to, because in my I know those early Van Halen albums pretty well, but that's the one that, right off the top of my head, if you said what's your least favorite Van Halen with Roth, I'd be like Diver Down easily.
Yeah.
And so I went back to listen to it again, and I'm like, yeah, it's still got a lot of weaker songs, 2 cover songs on it, three cover songs on it. And it just seems like they didn't have all of their shit together. But at the end of the day, it's Van Halen, which is way better than most bands anyway. But just as their album, I think it's pretty weak.
That's the thing. If you put on a Roth era Van Halen album, you're not gonna not have a good time, but you'll probably have a better time with other earlier albums, or maybe even 1984, which came after it. But I would agree Diver Down is weaker than a lot of their other albums, especially down to the fact that like a good portion of it isn't original material.
Yeah.
But and then I've got Saints and Sinners by Whitesnake.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I saw that, and I was like, I bet Will's going to talk about this one.
Yeah, I had to include it as well, and on not so much covers, but this album contains quite a few that would get a bit of a revamp when David Coverdale decided, hey, we're going to be a glam metal band now. And I think Crying in the Rain is on it. Here I Go Again, the original version, is definitely on it. The more bluesy one with the organ. I had to put this on here because I heard one song off it, and I did a skim listen through the album. I didn't really have time to give it a proper go, but I already know I'm going to love it from the production and the songwriting on it. Tigers of Pantang, The Cage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I heard it and I thought, this is exactly up my street.
A classic Nawabum band.
Oh Oh, for sure. But that was the album where they decided, hey, let's go full on 80s sing along stuff. So and finally I've got Judas Priest with Screaming for Vengeance.
Yeah, which I went through and I listened to this album, and I admittedly am not a big Judas Priest fan, and I don't know a lot of their stuff very well. And I went through and listened to this album, and I realized that the songs that I enjoyed the most were the mid-tempo rockers. The ones that you could call more metal songs are great, but I found myself really digging in when they get their groove going. I'm like, oh, this is good. And that's something interesting to talk about if we ever jump onto Judas Priest, is talking about how they're a band that I don't think gets enough recognition for the variety of songs, because everyone's just like, oh, they're metal, and I'm like, well, I don't know, that's a loose term. Saying Judas Priest is metal is a very loose term, because there is good time, four on the floor rock tunes on every album they put out, except for maybe some later albums where they became more metal minded. But I love those just straightforward rockers.
It's kind of like saying, what's your favorite candy or sweet flavor, and you go Skittles flavor, because there's shitloads of different Skittles. So like the Skittles analogy, people, we got more and more food analogies every week.
Haven't they figured out that it's all the same flavor, and our brains are just tricked because they're colored differently?
My God, my life has been a lie.
I don't know if that's true. I'm just spreading conspiracy theories at this point.
I mean, there's stranger ones. There's stranger conspiracies that make more or less sense.
But yeah, Screaming for Vengeance is a really good album. It didn't make my list. You've mentioned a couple that I think are great.
Like for me,
are you done with your list?
I was just going to say about Screaming for Vengeance. Some of the songs on it are classic Judas Priest, and the other half is kind of like, yeah, okay. But outside of the album as a whole, I wouldn't choose to listen to the ones that don't grip me, and that's kind of my Screaming for Vengeance thing.
Yeah. So I only have a couple. You mentioned a couple of the ones that were kind of on my radar, but the two big ones for me, Misfits, Walk Among Us, came out in 1982.
Yeah.
And that is a really great album. It's another punk album from that era that is just banger after banger. But to be honest, the Misfits overall for me hasn't aged that well. It's easy to point out that, simple things like if you take the sing along choruses and the basically the lyrics and melodies that Glenn Danzig brought to those songs, if you take those out, the songs are just kind of whatever songs. Like there aren't riffs or things that stand out like, oh, this was a killer riff. No, it's you come into it because of the anthemic quality brought on by Glenn Danzig. Yeah. So once you start tearing that album apart from that aspect of it, it's just like, oh, yeah, it's great, but not top 5 quality in my opinion. And then my other one is the album Long After Dark by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Cool.
I love Tom Petty. He's one of my favorite musicians of any time, no matter what. But Long After Dark, even though it was my introduction to Tom Petty, the first Tom Petty song I ever heard was You Got Lucky off of this album. And that's a really great song, but the whole album is not that strong. There's an 80s period of Tom Petty where he made great music. If you love Tom Petty, the music is great, but comparatively speaking, these are albums that would be lower on my list if we did a ranking of Tom Petty, because there's a lot of sort of less inspired songs. But it's still Tom Petty at the end of the day. But those are really the only two that I really felt like I needed to call out. I mean, obviously, you also have Iron Fist by Motorhead came out.
Yeah.
But honestly, that just sounds like the last few Motorhead albums before it. So it's like it's nothing new at all.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things once again where if you're a Motorhead fan, of course you love Iron Fist, but there's not a lot to say about it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say the same.
So yeah, so there we go. That is wrapping up 1982. This was interesting. I love coming to these years and finding out what our wild cards are, you know, because
Yeah.
I feel like each of us always brings something that's because obviously everyone knew we were going to talk about Number of the Beast, like that's
Yep.
kind of a given. But talking about Toto was something that I wasn't entirely expecting, and it makes me kind of want to go and check out not only that album but other shit that Toto did. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and that's why we do it, folks.
I'd say if you want like hard hitting heavy Toto, check out the album Kingdom of Desire from 1992.
Oh,
and
okay.
They kind of stripped back a little bit and decided, hey, we have no other vocalists apart from Steve Lukather. He is the sole vocalist on that album, but you can tell it's led by the guitar work because there's riffs and there's heavy riffs and there's even I won't spoil the listening experience for you, but halfway through the title track of that album, Kingdom of Desire, you're gonna wanna like take your hair down and wave that shit around because goddamn, like there are some headbanger moments
Nice
on that one.
Who would have thought from Toto?
Yeah, that's the thing.
And that's my own ignorance because I just knew them from Africa and Rosanna, and that's really it.
I'd love to do Toto at some point. Like they'd be a cool thing to cover. Yeah.
I just if we keep this thing going for a long period of time, we're going to reach those bands for sure. Where it's
yeah.
just like fuck it, let's do Toto.
Yeah.
So that's it. That is our top 5 favorite albums of 1982. Thank you for listening. You can put some comments down below about your favorites of 82 if you're listening to this on YouTube. And if you are a person that enjoys listening on the go as a podcast, this is actually a podcast. You can go find it on your Spotify's and your Apple Podcasts and Stitcher, whatever it is. You pod something. There's a lot of those out there, but you can find this there. And so thanks very much for listening. This is one of our shorter ones, obviously, but that seems like how these kind of come together. We always end up, the years end up being about an hour 45. I mean, I guess they would be considered long to some people, but we can go longer, folks, as you may have heard. So, and we may end up going longer soon. We'll see. We'll see where we go from here. But that's all I got for 1982. Any closing remarks?
I guess what I would say is with these year episodes, it always gives us a minute to bring like bands kind of outside of what you would expect us to know and listen to. And obviously Toto 4 is not a metal album, and I know this is a metal channel, and we're known for loving that kind of music, but we like a lot of music. We're music fans. We're not just metal fans.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it's our favorite, it's not the only thing we listen to, and that's a good thing to be because it's rewarding and it allows you to enjoy more music. Who wouldn't want that? So
yeah. Plus, I think that it will sometimes shine a light on the aspects of the metal that you enjoy, like why you enjoy them. You hear other music, and it really sort of highlights. Oh well, there's this, and then there's this. The thing. It's I don't know. I feel like you can't really appreciate music in a thoughtful way until you're ready to open yourself up to whatever, I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinions, and I think going with how you feel is the way to do it at the end of the day, because forcing yourself to like something is just that's bullshit, and that's being a poser, as some people would say. But the stuff that naturally comes to you, that some people would consider guilty pleasures, but just sometimes things will come your way that you feel like, oh, I like this. Just let that in, and that ends up sort of giving you a different perspective on the heavy music that you're into. Because if somebody said, musically, what would you consider yourself? I'd say, well, I'm a metalhead, without even blinking an eye. But I also love old school hip hop a lot. Like that will, depending on what years we get to, old school hip hop albums will start showing up in our year rankings. But yeah. I don't know. It's preaching here. I feel like people that are listening to this, especially if you've lasted this long, I feel like you're probably all very mature music listeners, and you know what we're talking about.
For sure. Yeah. So we've pretty much done it. We did it. 1982. We were scared of this one.
Maybe we could get some feedback from the YouTube people on what another great year would be for us to tackle next time we do a year. So if you have any ideas, throw them down below. And once again, thanks for listening. Anything else from you, Eddie?
Maybe even a year that isn't really known for giving us many well-known iconic albums. So really putting us to the test on that one. Let's find a year that's like explicitly regarded as like a strange one. So
cool. 1929.
Just ranking all of the fucking vaudeville stuff.
All right. Well, on that note, let's get the fuck out of here. Thank you very much for listening to Cranked and Ranked. We'll be back soon with another episode. And Mr. Eddie Sparks, take us out.
Later, dude.